welcome to a new episode of the Keeper of the Jewels podcast. We are your ultimate source for everything Black and excellent, where we celebrate the excellence and richness of Black culture, history, entertainment, and inspiration. I'm your host, Eric Majette Jr., also known as the Keeper of the Jewels. Today, we have a powerful episode lined up for you as we celebrate 50 years of hip hop. I have for you one of our hidden heroes that's coming to the forefront with this episode. He's being honored at the Hip Hop Awards, Mr. Alvin Jones. Now, for you guys that are younger, I'm going to let you know. Brother Alvin Jones is the creator of Rap City. He was inspired by BET founder Bob Johnson to create a program that would excite an audience of young adults that had never been considered or acknowledged by mainstream media. For 19 years, Rap City, which was created by Brother Alvin Jones, was a successful, popular, and exciting platform for the record industry. Rap City gave rappers a platform to tell their stories. And Rap City made hip hop relevant and gave record companies a vehicle to distribute the soulful, raw stories of the inner city. But before we get started, I want to shout out our sponsor for the episode, the African American Cultural Heritage Collection. Make sure you go visit the shop at www.blackhistoryarchives.com/shop. And you can see that right below your screen here. That'll be right there. Here we go. This is where you can get your wearable Black history and support a Black-owned collection. All proceeds go to helping further the mission and helps us keep Black artifacts and history in Black hands. So without further ado, here is an intro for our guest.
Celebrating over 45 years as a broadcaster, Alvin Jones started his career as the host of the #1 rated Quiet Storm on WHUR 96.3 FM. An innovator, his work at Black Entertainment Television helped take BET from an 8-hour-a-day cable network to the 24-hour powerhouse for the music video genre.
Like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Known as the Unseen VJ, he hosted and produced music video programs, Video Vibrations, Soft Notes, Midnight Love, and created the 19-year show Rap City.
All right, let's welcome to the show our brother Alvin Jones.
Eric, how are you, man?
I am fantastic. It's such a pleasure to have you here. You are a legend in your own right, if you don't know already.
Well, I used to be a legend in my own mind, but I guess now I'm legitimate.
Definitely. So my question to you is, you created this platform, but how did you first get started with BET and Bob Johnson?
All right, so that's interesting because to start with BET, they offered me a job to be the host of this new show, which was going to be Video Vibrations, right? And Jeff Lee had called me. I'm working at the radio station doing Quiet Storm. So I was Melvin Lindsay's basically understudy. I worked in for him on the weekends. And then, whenever he went on vacations, Melvin would go, "Hey, I'm going on vacation. He wants you to sit in for me." And so I was working part-time. I was about 24, 25 at the time. And I wanted to do some other things. I wanted to expand and instead of just doing weekends. And one day I go in, and this is back in the day when we used to have the pink little phone messages, and it was in my mailbox, and it was Jeff Lee, who was the network operations vice president for BET, and I'm like, maybe he's gonna offer me a job. And so I called him. He said he was going on honeymoon. He just got married, and for me to call him when he got back, and I did. Went to the office, and he says, "Oh, at that time, because BET until October 1st of 1984, BET was only on 8 hours a day from like I think it's like 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. or something, whatever the hours are, to make it 8 hours a day. And they were going to go 24 hours. And they had this idea they were going to do this show that was going to be music videos, but having someone in the studio, kind of like what you see with Howard Stern or The Breakfast Club and podcasts. That's how they were going to put this together for Video Vibrations. And I remember coming in the office and Jeff is talking about this, and I'm thinking, okay, is this something he's telling me about, or is he offering me a job? So I tell everybody, when someone talks to you about a job, you say this: are you considering me for the job, or are you offering me the job? So he said, I'm offering for the job. So Jeff Lee was sitting back, laid back, chilled. And then Bob Johnson comes in. And then Jeff sits up straight in the chair and moves out the way, because it was actually Bob Johnson's office, because Jeff's office was up. We had offices up at Channel 20, which was one of the local channels here in DC. And so Jeff says to Bob, hey, this is the guy, Alvin Jones. We're going to bring him in to kind of host the show, da, da, da. And then Bob says, well, why don't we make him an announcer and give him, make him full time? I'm like, oh gosh, I got a job. I got a full-time job. So Bob Johnson gave me a full-time job. And I remember it was the first day was my mother's birthday. So I'm 25, and I guess the birthday present that every mother wants is her son to have a full-time job. And BET that day went from 20 people to 40. And so I'm either employee number 21 through 40. And in high school, I always wanted to be in television and media and things like that, right? So in high school, I was always talking trash about. I knew that television cameras were $60,000 back in 1976, and the lens was another $15,000. But that's what I wanted, and I wanted to create the first Black television network. I was like, yeah. And so, of course, Bob created the first television network, but I got a chance to work at the first Black television network, and they offered me a job. So you can't get any more fortunate than that. And as I go on to tell you, Bob Johnson was always like in my corner, always in my corner. And that I appreciate. And even when I left BET, it was difficult. I had to resign to Bob so I could tell him why I was leaving. I wanted to start my own thing and do my own thing, and I felt it was time. And it was a conflict, because what we were doing was so successful, was going so well, and I could have stayed there, but there was a part of me that, you have to follow your road. You have to do your thing. And that was hard. And I wanted Bob to know that I really appreciated it. So I probably should have resigned to my supervisor or to my vice president, but I resigned to Bob Johnson because I wanted him to know how much I really appreciated his support for all of that. So going back to us, getting started with the show, Video Vibrations was 4 hours long, and we didn't have many Black videos, so we played white videos. So I played Corey Hart, I played Scandal, I played David Bowie, and when they had Black videos, we were like happy, because think about it, Video Soul was basically the pinnacle, the flagship station. You had Donnie Simpson, who, Donnie was the love bug in Detroit. So he was on the air at high school. He came to DC, and I'm surprised Donnie's never become a sportscaster, because he used to work over at NBC and he would do sports on the weekends. Everybody just thought he was going to be the next Bryant Gumbel, or the next Gus Johnson, the next person you see on television doing sports. And he was just a natural. Everybody fell in love with Donnie. So you've got Video Soul, which is this powerhouse. And they were like, oh no, we're not putting any rap in Video Soul. So it all came over to us. And that's kind of how it kind of flowed. You had, this flagship show, Video Soul. And as videos came in, we needed to play them, because if we didn't play the videos, then the record companies wouldn't make them, and that would hurt artists. So we were, give us anything you want, anything you got, we'd play it. And that's how we were able to get people who probably wouldn't see the light of day on. And we were happy to do that because we wanted content. They wanted they wanted to be seen. And then there was an audience that wanted to see themselves. And so I think that's what it was, a trifecta. We had the platform, they had the music in the content, and there were people who were hungry to see it. So everybody benefited from that.
Wow. Okay. So, in your opinion, just in retrospect, how do you see it changing history?
Huh?
In your perspective, looking from the inside out,
Mm.
how do you see that it changed history? We know, of course.
You know what's interesting? I never thought about changing history, but now that I realize it, it's like rock and roll or the blues. It's rap, hip hop is a music genre that is of that time, and it also speaks to people of what was going on in their lives. And the one thing that hip hop did is it let people know that their story was relevant. They could relate. Um, they would hear something. Now it's funny because as we were playing the music in the background for that intro,
Mhm.
depending on how old you are, you either heard "It's Like a Jungle." Sometimes it makes me wonder how I keep from going under, or you heard "Cause girls is players too," and it's just funny how it bridges that whole gap. But it was a part of our lives, and Black folks wanted to see themselves.
Mhm.
Um, Me growing up, I'm 64, so I remember um, I was 6, 4, 5. I got to stay up late if somebody Black was on TV.
Mm.
So if it was the Four Tops
Mhm.
or the Jackson 5 or even and sometimes Elvis, but it was so rare that you saw Black people on TV. And during that time, we were coming off of Reagan, we were coming off of Bush. So all of that was going on because you had all of the things that were pushed forward for Black folks during the 70s with, you remember Chic had Good Times, we had Moving On Up, you had yeah, Joyce and Wheezy, and all of these things were starting to be pulled back. And Black folks felt that, you know, just as we start to move forward, they're trying to pull us back. And then you had all the things that were going on. And I didn't realize until maybe a couple of months ago, that's what people came home to. We were like the Mr. Rogers for Black folks.
Yeah.
Um, and just the fact that they could see someone that looked like them, they could, they could see Kid and Plays fade and go, oh, I'm gonna get one of them.
Yeah.
Um, you see somebody like MC Light and Queen Latifah, you know, girls wanted to be Queen Latifah and MC Light, and guys wanted to have a woman who was strong and held it down like that. So it it's interesting that it's a part of the history. I didn't know this at the time.
Mm.
But at the same token, when you're in the frame, you don't see the picture.
Right.
So right now, what I'm enjoying is the fact that people are telling me what this thing meant to them. And
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. And now I feel, hey, I guess I did something okay. You don't know when you're doing this how it's going to turn, and you don't do it for the outcome because you don't know how it's going to turn out. But the fact that people like Rap City, the fact that other people came along and kept Rap City going,
Mhm.
um, I'm happy watching everybody. It's funny because I don't have kids, but now I kind of know how grandparents feel when they go to the family reunion,
Yeah.
and grandpa says to grandma, you know, if it wasn't for us, none of these people would be here. And so, but you just see what you've been able to help people do and create. And that's the great thing, is to be able to pass it off and let them take it and say, okay, we think it's going this way, it's going to evolve. So
Mhm.
it's like being fruitful and multiply. You plant a seed,
Yes.
and that grows a tree that has fruit, and that fruit has seeds that has other fruit, and it just grows and grows and grows. Because the other thing is, hip hop saved the record industry.
Yes. Please talk about it.
Hip hop saved the record industry because hip hop and country,
Mhm.
because that's where people start spending their money. That's where people started buying records and music, and everybody thought it was a fad.
Right.
And so now we realize it's a part of culture. That's the whole thing that's so crazy is that people grew up on this. It's a part of their lives.
Mhm.
And so I look at someone like Hans, the better known as Prime, who just when we were at BET over in Alexandria, Virginia, he's an intern and all he's doing is just talking about rap this, rap this, rap this. And everybody's like, yeah, I don't want to hear it. And I've always been kind of crazy that I'll listen to anybody. And I think that's because I want people to listen to me. So if someone comes off the street and just starts talking to me, we'll have a conversation. And people are like, you talk to anybody. I'm like, yeah, everybody has a story. And so while everybody's like, yeah, I don't want to hear it. I'm like, come here, tell me about this rap stuff. And
Mhm.
so him giving me that background and that advice helped me because we wouldn't have had a Rap City without Prime, better known as AKA Hans Dotson. That's his Hans Beck Dotson is his as they say government name. So
Mhm.
this whole was about all people working together. It was about family working together. It was about you know giving something, giving creativity a chance. And I think you know hopefully we as people now, if we can get back to what that whole thing about hip hop was and not being out for us, but being out for the collective. Because if you think about it, here's the thing that's so cool, Eric. Friday night, I literally just landed before we started this, and I'm staying with my sisters and my brother-in-law. So I literally just got in. I ain't even unpacked anything. But Friday,
Mhm.
a very good friend of mine, Lisa, shout out to Lisa if she's watching, says, "Hey, I got tickets to see DJ Cool Herc." I'm like, "What?" Is and his sister. So, the father of hip hop and the first lady to be able to see what they did and how they pulled this off. Um, those are the amazing things. So it gives me gratitude, if you know what I'm saying. But
Definitely.
what I realized, they were talking about how they did this party, but the adults were there,
Mhm.
and it was, they were selling hot dogs and this and that. So the parents and the grandparents there. So it was all collective and family. And what I'd like to see is hip hop continues to that next thing, is to come back around and get into that inclusiveness. I was at the Congressional Black Caucus, so T.I. and Yo-Yo were on a panel with Congresswoman Maxine Waters, better known as Ani Maxine.
Mhm.
Congressman Jamal Bowman had a panel also, and they're talking about that with Kevin. Different folks that could talk about where it is, because now we were kids then. Now we're paying taxes. We got mortgages. We're trying to put our kids to school, and all of these things are important. So now hip hop is political because everything that happens, whether you can, do your hair braiding business in your basement, um, whether you can do a food truck in your neighborhood, all that
Mm.
stuff's political, and it affects your money, it affects your standard of life. So I think hip hop getting into politics is going to be that next level. But then that means we got to come together, because if you look at the way things are marketed, everything is marketed just for you.
Right.
you know, get your this. You see people walking down the street, they got earplugs in their hair. They got the ear pads. Nobody's interacting, because guess what? As long as they can keep you from talking to the next person, you think it's just about you, and it has
Mm.
nothing else to do. And that's the other thing about that. We are at a point now where mental health is extremely important. We as folks have always had mental health challenges. We just kind of pushed it to the corner and didn't say anything. But with COVID, with the isolation, with people working from home, a lot of people are dealing with those challenges. So when I hear, "Don't push me because I'm close to the edge, I'm trying
Mm.
to lose my head," that was the person talking to his therapist. Music was his therapy. and he's talking about what's going on. What's going on, man? Man, it's like a jungle. Sometimes it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. In other words, I understand this is serious here, and it has to be paid attention to. So what I want to be able to do is to take hip hop to that next chapter, and let's bring everybody back together. Let's talk about some of the problems that we have. Because here's what's funny, Eric. Remember when supposedly it was all about the crack, and we're going to shut down this, and we're going to put people in jail and da da da. When it became crystal meth,
Yes.
they looked at it
See
differently.
how that was. Right.
For about 17 years, I worked on Capitol Hill covering hearings. So I'm there for the State of the Union. I'm there for the inaugurals. I was there when the Pope came. I'm here every Tuesday at the Senate leadership hearings. I'm covering that. Same thing with the House. And I noticed once it was crystal meth, once it was in rural neighborhoods,
Right.
the way that they approached drug abuse changed.
Yeah.
It changed. And
Yeah.
so
Once the complexion changed, that's when the approach changed.
exactly. So
Mhm.
that's what I'm looking at. I'm in Atlanta. I know Black folks got Senator Warnock in. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
I know the power of the of that vote. And that's why, think about it. Back then, they were trying to take our vote. And they're still trying to do it because that's the power. If someone's doing something that's not good for them and it helps you, you don't say anything. Like this. Do you think a dentist was going to stop you from eating a candy bar? No. but when we start trying to vote, when we start paying attention to what's going on, when we get involved with our kids, it's just funny. I produce a sports radio show. Today we're talking about that. And the guy, Jason Whitlock, is trying to say that these coaches will say when they're trying to recruit and get these kids to play football for them instead of Deion Sanders. Well, once Deion's sons gets in the NFL, he's not going to be bothered. He's going to leave. And I'm like, wait a minute. We're punishing a Black man for looking after his kids?
Right.
Come on now. Right. So I just see hip hop making that turn and all coming back together. And I think I've had a chance to see just a little bit of the documentary, and I've got to take my hands off to Mass Appeal and BET for putting it in a way that I never thought about. Is the culture and the history. I think when people look at this documentary, it'll be the foundation for taking things and making changes and going to the next level. So that's the thing I'm proud about. If something I can do can contribute to making the world a better place, I'm good with it. I'm so good with it.
So there's two more questions that I want to do in this segment.
That's all.
Tell me, I know,
you can ask whatever you want.
To the next one.
Right.
But because I know you just traveled in, I know you haven't had time to.
No, I'm good. I'm sitting down and I'm good. I wanted to make sure we got in time because I wanted to be on your show because you are the keeper of the jewels. You know what I'm saying?
I really
shout out to Eric Majette Jr., the keeper of the jewels. This is Alvin Jones, aka the Unseen VJ, aka the Rap City Creator, and I am so happy to be with the keeper of the jewels, Eric Majette Jr. Now tape that and use that as a promo. How about that?
I definitely. That's the first drop I've got. I never even thought to ask people, but thank you. I appreciate that. But that's why
you know what? I feel good. I was your first drop. Yeah,
definitely.
Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot.
So let me ask you, who are your top 3 favorite guests of all time on Rap City?
Oh man.
Uh-huh.
And see, I gotta go old school.
I figured.
If I look at it, it's gonna be LL.
Okay.
It's gonna be Will Smith.
Okay.
And the third, I have to say, I would say Chubb Rock.
Okay.
You know why?
No, please tell us.
Chubb Rock got on BET on Rap City and told everybody he had a 1400 SAT.
Wow.
See, you get my point, right?
Yeah.
Could you
And that's
imagine you're in school, you listen to Chubb Rob, Toe, Dink, and Hot Dog, doo 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 doo, right? And he talks about having a 1400 SAT, and I'm like, now there's going to be some kids watching this who want to have excellence. So that's why. But I tell you, the best show I still think was the show we did at Children's Hospital.
mm,
So that first year, um, what I wanted was I wanted these young folks, these rappers, these hip hop artists to be looked at in a positive way. Because
mm,
you're you're young, gifted, and black, but that don't mean your ass won't get pulled over. You know what I mean?
well,
So what I wanted, there's a buddy of mine, Joe Madison, who's known as the Black Eagle,
ego.
who's on XM Radio, and he's been like a mentor to me. And he says, sometimes we're underestimated, undervalued, and marginalized. What I
Mm,
wanted to do with Rap City is to set a standard where young black folks were looked at as human beings. So I was thinking one day, what is sad? What is sad is having a child in the hospital. What's sadder than that? Having a child in the hospital on Christmas. So what we decided to do is we were going to do a Christmas special on Rap City, and we went to Children's Hospital. And so I can always remember 6 out of 7. So it was Run DMC, Fat Boys, Chuck Chill Out and Cool Chip, MC Light, LL Cool J, Kwame, and there was somebody else.
mm,
I keep forgetting who that 7th act was. And we had Buffy from the Fat Boys dressed in a Santa Claus suit. He went around to see the kids. They loved it. And so for each rapper that came on, so it was LL and his DJ, they also had little buddies. So one of the patients that was there there was a patient for every rapper and every DJ that was there. And what was really cool about it is like all of BET came to help out with that. We all came together, and the fact that we were able to show the world that these young rappers, these black young men and women cared about people, and they were human beings. They weren't thugs. They weren't thieves. They were caring human beings who cared about other people. So that show to me is always going to be the best Rap City show ever.
and that's interesting. So you kind of answered my next question, but I want to pose it to you because you may say something else. So,
All right.
what was the most impactful moment for the culture on Rap City?
On Rap City, I think for me, because you got to realize I have to look at it from my perspective. I
Absolutely.
think the other thing was Black History Month. We went to Indianapolis because there had been this thing where there was a brew hub about Public Enemy coming to the school. So we went to that school, and we took Stetsasonic and Third Base, and we talked about Black history. Now, what was interesting, because Search from Third Base, of course, is white and Jewish, but he was there for Black History Month. So we had Daddy O and G Wiz from Stetsasonic, and they were talking about Black history. And so it was Pete Nice and MC Search from Third Base. And Serge says, I can't teach you Black history because I'm not Black, but I can be a student. And that to me was very pivotal. It says you don't have to be this type of person to want to learn or to care about that type of person. So it's like this. I don't have children, but I've been involved with Girls on the Run for years, because it's a program that teaches young girls by running, and they do 5Ks to have confidence in themselves. And if you can get a young girl to have confidence in herself when she's between fifth and 7th grade, then as she becomes an adult, she will have confidence in herself. And then also, one of my passions today, as we're taping this, is October 1st, but and everybody knows about breast cancer awareness, but September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and I've been involved with causes for that. And I don't have children, so a lot of times I'll get involved in things because I think they're important, not necessarily because they benefit me. If that kind of answers the question, I hope.
Yes, sir, it does. It definitely does. So let's take a quick break. We're going to take a quick 30-second break, and then we'll come right back.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. So before we jump back in with our guest, the legendary unseen VJ, Brother Alvin Jones, I want to just mention our statement of purpose here at the Keeper of the Jewels podcast. So the goal here is to create honest narratives of American history from an African American perspective that tells our truth, our inspires, motivates, and empowers healing and reconciliation using artifacts, stories, and digital products to help create a more inclusive and diverse human experience. The show name comes from my late mentor, the legendary Dick Gregory, who bestowed upon me the name the Keeper of the Jewels. It was because he was impressed with my commitment and to one, the culture, but also the extraordinary sacrifices of spending my life savings to buy back our history and preserve it from white dealers and white auction houses. I've spent literally every dime. So that's how the name the Keeper of the Jewels came about. Now, I'm told you have some history stories of your own, and I want to know some of your legendary stories.
Well,
I,
it's funny. We're like brothers and cousins because we both. I was mentored by Dick Gregory,
I heard.
and it's funny. In the music industry, we lost a legend last year, Sidney Miller, because he had BRE magazine. And whenever BRE magazine had their conference, BET would come out and do Video Soul Live. So um, Sydney was like Uncle Sydney to me because he moved from LA and he was here in the DC area. And one time he calls me and says, "Look, I want you to do some videotaping." I'm like, "Okay." And it was for Dick Gregory because he and Dick Gregory were like that. So we go to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, of all places. And Dick would always go to Harper's Ferry around the birthday of John Brown.
John Brown. Yeah.
He'd honor John Brown, right?
Mhm.
And he would go there because he said, "Here's a cat, a white cat, that sacrificed his life and his kids' life for Black folks, to get rid of slavery." And of course, that whole siege, because, Dick knows the truth. So when you go to Harper's Ferry, there's an area where you see what was the replica of the garrison where all the weapons were stored, but it wasn't really there, it was somewhere else. And so we're walking up and down with him and Ife Williams, and I'm videotaping this. But I remember that day because before we went to do that, because Harper's Ferry is a part of the Department of Interior, National Park Service. So we went into this other place and we did a prayer because at that time, Aretha Franklin was having surgery. It wasn't, it was 2014 maybe. So the surgery came out all right. So we all, and even the park ranger, we did a prayer. And then I go to use the bathroom. And as I come back, Sidney Miller says to me, Dick Gregory goes, "Who's that MF?" And Eric, you know Dick, so you know he would punt. You know how remember Dick would just do this. Look, fool, you don't know what you're talking about. And it was out of love. So he said, Dick Gregory says to Sidney, "Who's that MF up there?" And I'm like, "Ooh, am I in trouble?" And he says, "He's the cameraman." And he goes, "That MF ain't no cameraman. Who is he?" And he just saw through me and saw who I was. And because, like I said, I like all aspects. So I will shoot, I will edit, I'll do lights, I'll hang stuff on a C clamp. I don't care as long as I'm a part of the creativity. Sometimes I like being behind the scenes and just finding people who have it and let them go for it. And so we were in the car with Dick, and Dick explained some things to me. I was like, wow. He was telling me So Ed Weinberger, who had the Cosby Show and did Roseanne and stuff, Ed Weinberger, I don't know if he's told you the story, was working at a Macy's in New York, and he signed him. He said, and you know Dick Gregory. Yeah, I signed him and these two other Jewish cats to write jokes. So Dick would come and say he was going to perform at 8 o'clock. Dick would come in at 7 p.m. He'd see the guys take the jokes, and he'd use the jokes or not use them, depending. And he said one time Ed Weinberger said to him, says, we feel like we're taking money from you. He says, why? He says, because we write this stuff and sometimes you don't even use it. He goes, no. Sometimes I use it. Sometimes I take what you give and augment it. And sometimes I save it for another time. And he told me I kind of remind him of Ed Weinberger. I'm like, wow. And so we're in the car driving back, and he says, I can see you doing certain things. I'm like, he says, I can see you doing the talk show where you're taking phone calls and playing music. And so I'm working with Arlington Independent Media, and they have a low power radio station in the DC area. And when they talk to me about doing some stuff, a buddy of mine says, let's do a talk show. And I'm like, okay, well, Dick Gregory said I should do a talk show. I remember I had a birthday party, and if you saw the Dick Gregory documentary on him, the whole thing is anytime you wanted Dick, his wife Lillian is the one who kept his schedule. So I said to Sydney, I said, listen, I'm having a birthday party. You think Sydney would come to my birthday party? And he says, call Lillian. So I do. And Dick shows up. And everybody's like, wow, you got Dick Gregory at your birthday party. And people say, well, how'd you get Dick Gregory? I called Lillian. But what was funny, Eric, my mom was there, my sister was there, right? My baby sister. So I go, Mom, Dick Gregory, Mom. And Dick taps my mother and says, well, it's a good thing you didn't abort this N-word because the world needs them. And my mom's real laid back, and she just smiled and go, but it was just so funny. And I have a painting someone did of Dick Gregory, and the only regret is I should have had him sign it at the time. Funny, it was this culture thing, and there was a comedian who was the MC, and so there was a bidding war, and I'm like back and forth, and I'm like, I am buying this. And the dude, every time he raised it, I'd raise it again. He raises 50, I raised it 50, and finally I just go, here's how much I'm paying. And he's like, okay, you got me. I'm like, yeah. But it was for a good cause. And now that I think about it, if I was at home, that picture is always in the background, that of Dick.
Wow.
Yeah. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to get you some of those pictures of the artifacts, at least the facsimiles of some of those things.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I'm really excited about that. But since we are talking about the artifact part, artifact sharing is what we do on the show. So on the Keeper of the Jewels podcast, we have each one of our guests to bring an artifact that means something to them and share the significance with us. The reason we do this is because we want to encourage everybody to become the jewel keepers for their own families. Now, I know you had some pieces that you had chose to share. If you want to tell the story about them, and once you send that over, we can go ahead and pose it on the screen during the editing. What did you want to share?
Well, you know what? I remember when the Washington football team was winning, 1988, the day after the Redskins won the Super Bowl, and Doug Williams did that fabulous comeback. I was in Cincinnati. So I've gone out to the Super Bowls. I just never go to the games. I just go to the parties. But this particular time, I stayed for the day after the game. And there's a radio station, XHRM in San Diego. And the reason they say X, because although it's a station considered the United States, the antenna is in Mexico. Oh, okay. So they go by where the antenna is. But because the antenna is in Mexico, it can be 100,000 watts instead of 50,000 watts. So whenever I would go places, I would, in the city, I go by the radio stations and say hi, like, oh, we got Alvin Jones from BET, and hey, Alvin, how you doing? Da, da, da. Even here down in Atlanta, Chicago, New York, the whole 9 yards. So I did the same thing, went to San Diego, and I meet this guy, and he's coming in to tape a mix show. And that's one of the things that they talked about on the Rap City documentary. A lot of the radio stations only had like a mix show where they played some rap. It wasn't playing 24 rap. But now that I think about it, K-Day was doing rap 24/7 in Los Angeles. So, but anyway, so I meet this guy and he gives me a cassette. So I will get to you. It's a cassette of MC Hammer's Feel My Power that I got in February of 1988.
Wow.
And say, but now you're making me think about artifacts. I've got like, the Dollar and Loose site when BET turned a profit. I've got like, the 5th anniversary plaque and 10th anniversary. So I'll get you copies of that. I don't know if I'm going to get you the actual one. I can't. I'll find something to give you of that stuff. Yeah. As an artifact.
That's major. We really appreciate that. We have been entrusted with, I've literally spent all my life savings. So we have about 15,000 original Black history artifacts. My oldest are original 15th century maps of Africa. And my most contemporary is Tupac's first publishing contract for Same Song.
Wow. All around the world, same song.
Yeah.
So you're competing with the African American History Museum of History and Culture, huh?
No comparison. I'm Black owned.
No, I love it because
the hard part is I paid for everything. They got a lot of stuff donated, which is a whole nother story of why
I got at least one thing I'm gonna donate to you, even if it's like one of the maybe the 1st or 5th anniversary plaques or something. I'll get you something. Now, you know what's interesting. I was did some, because I told you I do video production stuff. Dick Gregory, I do stuff for Dr. Dorothy Height. And so I did some shooting behind the scenes for the Henrietta Lacks family. So the day they went into court with Ben Crump and this was like summer of 2022. Yeah. So it's interesting, and there's a guy, oh my goodness, a fantastic artist. He goes by the name of Pat Casso, and he's known for drawing upside down, and when you turn it around, you'll see the actual person that it is. I will get you some pictures of that, because the day that John Lewis's body was lying in state, we went and we were right on the back end of the Capitol. I'll get you video of that. And you can have that for the archives, because he's doing this painting of John Lewis. And as we're doing it, there's a rainbow that comes up over the Capitol.
Wow.
And I looked at it and I said, nowhere in the history of the earth, of the galaxy, will there ever be a time where John Lewis is lying in state at the Capitol and there's a rainbow coming over. And we got that on video. And he's drawing the picture of John Lewis while that's going on. Wow. So I'll get you a copy of that video also. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. I'm really in awe right now. Like, I knew you had some great stories, but I thought it was going to be more so from the rap perspective, from the show. But you've got some amazing stories, just historically.
Oh, I got another story. We were one of the first people to put video online.
I did read that. Yes.
Yeah.
First online content. I do remember reading that.
It was only 320 by 240. It was because you didn't have much bandwidth. So
right.
You had to go with that little small stuff. And what was funny, because we were working with Microsoft. So a buddy of mine, we went to college together. His wife was a meteorologist in Seattle. So she was good friends with Bill Gates' mom. And through that was the door in. and they had this idea that they wanted to do they called it new media. So the first thing we did was NAACP Image Awards. Then we did Clive Davis's Grammy, pre-Grammy party. And then that was funny because then we did a global green carpet. And then we had talked to them about doing the Cannes Film Festival. And they're like, oh, you won't be able to do that. You know how we can't even get in. I said, okay, fine. So we went up. Remember when everybody was watching TV Guide channel?
Oh, yes.
So we did a piece with special with TV Guide channel. We went over to Cannes for the film festival. And what was funny about that was the year that Al Gore won for was it Inconvenient Truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was funny because as we're in Nice coming back to New York, and 50 Cent's on the plane with us. So
wow.
Yeah, but no, you know what? I've been blessed in life. I was just talking to, as I got off the plane, Rick Johnson. Rick was the director for BET with Rap City. So he was also, in the studio when we did it live, we did stuff on the road together. And we were just talking about what we had to do. Because Rick and I would always go back and forth. We'd be fussing and cussing at each other because we both had to make sure that we knew what we were doing because it was going out on TV. And not only were we representing ourselves, we were representing Black people. Because you know how it is when one Black person does something wrong, everybody gets blamed.
Everybody.
And
right.
so it was funny because I'm like, people would look at us and see us fuss, and then they see us having a beer and laughing and joking. It's like, what is wrong with y'all people? I said, you don't understand. We're both trying to get excellence. We're pushing each other and sharpening the saw. And when it works, we're like, it was almost like the Justice League at the end of the show.
Yeah.
So I actually called Rick as soon as I got off the plane. I'm like, Rick, they're having a screening tomorrow. So the screening is going to be on the 2nd. I'm like, I want you there because you're a part of this. There's a lot of people that went into making this work that were behind the scenes, that even the person I do a shout out to Jean Marie Brown, now Jean Marie Brown Johnson. She's the one that came up with the term Rhapsody. So she was thinking Rhapsody, caught up in the Rhapsody, and it just evolved into Rap City. And it was funny because I remember a few years after I left BET, I was talking to someone and she was trying to tell, I created the name. I'm like, no, you didn't. Because, everybody claims stuff when they didn't do it. You know what I mean? Everybody supposedly was there, but they weren't. And so, no, the one thing I do have is a good memory, and I think that gets me in trouble sometimes. But I remember I was trying to find a name, and I didn't even like the name, but it stuck. And I'm like, ooh, it worked. So since we had it Rap City, so we decided we were going to have the mayor of Rap City. And going back to what you were asking me about, some of the shows. So that show that we did with Third Basins, that's a Sonic for Black History Month, but also coming into February of 1989, Seattle elected its first Black mayor, Norm Rice, to be mayor. And most people didn't even know that there were Black people in Seattle, let alone a Black mayor. But we had developed a relationship with Sir Mix-a-Lot's people, Nasty Mix. Matter of fact, the first video we played for them was Posse on Broadway. And I remember one time we were going somewhere, and it was in Atlanta. I saw the Nasty Mix shirts because they were going to catch one flight. We were catching another flight. We're like, hey, how's it going? And so we just kind of, so it was Ricardo and Ed Locke and all those guys. I said, look, for Black History Month, I want to do something with Norm Rice. So they're like, come on up. And that's what we did. We went up to Seattle and we sat down with Norm Rice. Because, in politics, heads of state sit down and have dinners. So you had Norm Rice. Where's my hand? Okay, Norm Rice is here, wherever. Chris Thomas is here, and Sir Mix-a-Lot is there. And so it's like a summit. It was like a hip hop mayor summit. And I wanted, once again, our young folks to see that kind of formal scenario. This ain't just on the streets. No, Rap City is in the mayor's office, if you know what I mean. Rap
Yeah.
City is at the Space Needle. And what was so cool is that the NBC station there came out to tape us taping because they
Wow.
thought it was a big deal that BET came out to Seattle to promote the rap that was going on in Seattle.
Wow.
So that was kind of the impact that we had. The other thing is when you went to places, man, BET was popular in places where you wouldn't think, you know. White
Mhm.
kids love BET. It's kind of like back in the day in the 50s, they used to call it race music, meaning parents didn't want their kids to listen to that Negro music, but you couldn't stop them because once that beat hit, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Once that beat hits and it's into you,
Tell us about the foundation of how Rhapsody was supposed to be set up, and I guess the pros and cons of it.
guys that would switch off and they would roll the video and I would track the audio, right? And they were going to put a camera in, similar to like what you see with the Breakfast Club and Howard Stern and all that stuff. Now that was the original piece, but we never got the camera in by the time the show started, and we just went on without it. And it was funny because at first I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be on TV." Then I'm like, "Oh, I'm not on TV." But I tell you what was funny and good because I wasn't on TV and I was behind the scenes. So we were able to do with video vibrations, and I could do Midnight Love and Soft Notes. So at one point when Rap City came out, I had 4 shows that I was hosting. I mean, 3 shows that I was hosting, 4 shows I was producing. So it became, for me, I've always wanted to see how things work. Um, I'm an automotive journalist, so a lot of times I go on these trips and they'll pick you up. You get to the airport, they pick you up, take you to the place, and you're driving cars. But I'm always fascinated about the behind the scenes things. So, for example, they'll have in a day 40 different automotive journals that they fly in. And it's the whole thing of the coordination of there's someone who stays at the airport and make sure everybody gets in, gets them in a car, gets them to the hotel. And then when we do the drive, there's like 20 cars and people are paired. So for me to be able to not have to worry about how I look on camera, uh,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get through the airport without people knowing who I
Wow.
am.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it's funny because I always tell people I'm like Clark Kent. You know, everybody loves Superman. Nobody pays attention to Clark Kent. But Clark can do everything that Superman can. And the one superpower that Clark Kent has, he knows how you really are. Because if you think
Mm-hmm.
about it, Lois Lane was always, you know, "Oh, Superman, you're such this and you're so great." And yeah, thank you, Lois. And then she go to Clark Kent, go, "Yeah, I won't be bothered with you." It's like you ever see those? They have them on TikTok and places where the guy's trying to talk to the girl, and the girl don't want to be bothered till he hits the dit, and now he's got
Uh-huh.
a Lamborghini. Now she wants to talk. So, um, for me, I just wanted to do the work. I wanted to be in this industry, and I just said, God, if you ever let me in this industry, I will do whatever I can. So that was me and God talking. And when God talks, you gotta listen. So yeah, that whole thing of the unseen VJ. And I've been thinking about this. This is nice. Um, but it's like I know what I did because I was there. You know what I'm saying? It's My family is very important to me. So my dad's 91, my mom's no, my dad's 93, my mom's 91. The other day I went by to see him. My dad's like, "Yeah, I'm proud of you." Um, I was just raised, you do what's right and, keep on moving. You know what I'm saying? So I I really appreciate the attention. It's kind of cool because more than anything, not what I did, but how were people affected by it? How were they helped by it? You want to think, if you're the person planting the seeds, you want to think that all of those plants get a chance to grow. And the other thing was, if you think about it, I started it and I was there about a year, and then I left BET and started my own thing. But there were other people in that mix that kept it going. It was like a relay. You pass it on. Um, we talk about Hans Dotson, better known as Prime. He was the one that knew about all of this rap when I knew nothing about rap. And
Mhm.
so I go to him and, well, tell me about this. And yeah, we just got this new video. Take a look at it. Oh, Daylight Soul, they dope, man. I'm like, really? It's like, yeah, yeah, okay. Um, so it grew. It grew. You know, folks like Joe Clare. I remember Joe Clare when he was working in the mailroom at NBC. You know, Chris Thomas, I knew way before Rap City, about maybe 5 years before that. And it was just everybody came together. And I think that's what made it work. It was the teamwork that made that dream work. You know how they say it takes teamwork to make the dream work. So
Absolutely.
that's what I like, is the fact that we all contributed to this. I got it started, but you know, if nobody else believes in it, if nobody else does anything with it, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And family, remember, we're all keepers of the jewels, and we are celebrating our heritage and empowering ourselves and honoring the legacy of those that came before us. So make sure you subscribe to the Keeper of the Jewels podcast on your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss a single episode. As well, make sure you go on youtube.com/, the Keeper of the Jewels for the video version. Until next time, let's continue to celebrate Black pride, Black excellence, Black history, Black culture, Black music, and Black power.
Thank you, kind sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us for episode 4 with Alvin Jones, the creator of BT's Rap City. And this is part 1. Stay tuned for episode 5, which is part 2.